Okay, so personal testimony time. I'm excited to be able to share with everybody a little bit about me and my life and being able to find God and get empowered with the Holy Spirit. So I grew up as a pastor's kid. So I grew up in the church, been going to church since I was born. My mom always tells a story about how I accepted Jesus into my heart when I was 3 and asked him to forgive me my sins. Now for me, I don't remember that. So the first real experience that I remember asking Jesus into my heart and to forgive me of my sins and really believing that I wanted my faith to be my own was probably about when I was 7. I was at camp. And nothing really special happened. I just asked Jesus into my heart and decided that I wanted to live my life for him. And so that happened about 7 years old. Flash forward about a year later, 2 years later, I was actually sexually abused and taken advantage of by somebody in our church that my dad had been ministering to and let into our home. So then the next couple years, probably until I was in college, I went back and forth between being on fire for God, being filled with the Spirit, wanting to walk with God, wanting to tell others about Jesus, to where then I would have to reconcile that I had this hurt that I hadn't told anybody about. And so I'd go back and forth between being on fire and trying to cope with the pain. And so I would have this flip-flopping where I feel like a lot of times I'd go from being on fire to being cold. And I was just that I hadn't got the healing that I needed to get from God because of that past hurt. And I had a lot of hurt just in the church in general of why nobody saw it and why God allowed it all to happen. Anyway, so I went back and forth a lot. That kind of way. I rebelled a little bit my teen years because of that. I would rebel one week and then be on for God the next week. And so finally, my freshman year of college, the first time around, I really just kind of told God that I was ready to walk away from him because I couldn't understand how he would allow all of these things to happen to me. And I was really confused. And so my mom actually put me in a car and she said, no, we're not gonna walk away from God. We're gonna figure out what's going on. And she took me in the car and we drove all the way 24 hours straight to Bethel, to Redding. And we stayed there for the weekend, and they didn't have like a big conference or anything. It was just my mom just kind of pulled me out and took me away and put me on this grand encounter with God. And I was finally able to open up to her about what had happened to me, and we were able to pray through it. And I came to this realization that God didn't cause that hurt, but sin caused it. Men having free will caused it, but that God was with me there the whole time. And God really brought me healing. And in that weekend, I was really able to encounter God and encounter God's Holy Spirit and his healing power. And I wish I could say that like when I came home, everything was better, because it wasn't. I still had to go through counseling, and I still had to walk through forgiveness, and I still had to really get all those moments. But it was this encounter with God where I realized that God loved me, and that in those moments where I had that past hurt, where I felt unseen, God saw me and God was there with me, and that God could work it all together. And that's kind of brought me to this point now in my life where I'm 26 and I'm going back to school to get my bachelor's, because I realize that I want to bring that same healing that I have to other people. So many of us have wounds. We like to say, my mom always told me that, God never causes the hurt, but he's never going to waste a hurt. So even though I had that hurt in my past, God wasn't going to waste it. And so now I want to be able to share what God did in my life through that healing, through just experiencing his love and the power of his Holy Spirit. And I want to be able to share that with other people who have wounds, who have been wounded by the church or wounded by people in their lives, and be able to share that with them. And so God has worked great miracles in me, and has brought great faith in me that, being a pastor's kid, I didn't hate the church. I still love the church. I want to be a pastor because of it all. But also it was just a season that you have to heal. Life hurts, but God heals. And that's the glorious of it all. So yeah, that's my personal testimony. Yes, I hope you enjoyed it.